Well, hello again, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's BU Alumni panel discussion, How to Be a Legendary Mentor. My name is Jeff Murphy. I'm a member of the Alumni Career Engagement team on the Alumni Relations team for the university. And I'm joined by my good colleague and co-host for today's event, Mary Bertrand from the College of Engineering Career Development Office. Today's event is offered to our 366,000 alumni around the globe and all of our current students. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping everyone define and achieve their professional goals. And we aim to do this by providing everyone with access to a series of valuable online tools and social media communities. Before we officially got things started, again, we've got alumni and students joining us from all over the world. Please know how much we appreciate your participation in this and every program that we offer. Before we get things going, just a couple housekeeping notes from me. First, today's presentation is going to be recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the Alumni and Friends website, which you can find at www.bu.edu/alumni. Secondly, our speakers today are very eager to answer any questions you have on the subject of mentoring, and you're welcome to submit them throughout our talk using the Q&A function. Much like the chat, just go ahead, click on Q&A, type in your question. We're going to save some time at the end to get to as many of those as we can. We'll also keep an eye on the chat if you'd rather just toss your question in there. So, according to today's internet, where of course everything is always true, today, October 27th, is National Mentoring Day. And the more I looked into that, it actually appears that the nation that they're referring to in this might actually be the United Kingdom. So for those of you who might be joining from overseas, thank you for joining us today to celebrate. But of course, we are all here today to celebrate National Mentoring Day. And I'm delighted to have a chance to shine a light on some of the amazing things that are happening in the College of Engineering around mentoring. So I've got three wonderful folks here to take a look at what makes good mentoring, or maybe what makes mentoring not so good sometimes. And my co-host, Mary Bertrand, has been behind the wheel of some amazing mentoring opportunities through the College of Engineering. Mary, thanks so much for being here today. Would you mind getting us started by telling us a little bit more about your role at engineering, and then also just kind of how you got invested in running some mentoring programs for the college?
Sure. So, well, of course, it's my pleasure to be here. And I'm the Associate Director of the Engineering Career Development Office. So in that office, we serve all engineers in their career journey, whatever that might mean for them. So some students go to grad school, some students go directly into careers, some students don't really know what that means. And so we provide a lot of programming for students from our office, through alumni, and through employers to help students figure out and navigate what life after college is going to mean to them. So that kind of naturally dovetailed into this mentorship thing. So we have an amazing community of engineering mentors, or engineering alumni who could be mentors, in many different industries and professions, basically as broad as could be. They're not all practicing engineers. We have folks in nonprofits and medicine, and really spanning the gamut of the lived experience. So that's the lens through which we approached this programming.
And Mary, from the alumni relations side, I've been so happy to be able to partner with you to deliver some of these programs on BU Connects. You've been doing this for, I think, going on 2 years now. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, before we ask some of our real invited experts today, what have you learned through that process about what it means to be a good mentor? What are the challenges that you've seen in running these programs, between some of the matches that you've made? What do you, when you think about National Mentoring Day, what is it that you want people to know about being a good mentor?
Sure. So I think there are many ways to be a good mentor. And so that's where I would start this, in that there is not a one size fits all approach. If there was, the one size would be meeting the mentee where they're at. But I think one of the things that has made this program successful is there have been a number of mentorship programs throughout the past few decades in engineering that have had varying levels of success at different times. And one of the things that we found made it both easy or regular on the side of both the mentor and the mentee is having a schedule. And so our program is pretty regimented, and we have students meet every 2 weeks for about 12 weeks. We have suggested topics that they can choose from to discuss. I think personally, when I've been involved in mentorship programs, both as a mentee and a mentor, it's kind of challenging sometimes to steer the relationship. And so we've taken a bit of a heavier hand in suggesting and structuring that experience for all of our participants.
Great. Well, you've got two of your seasoned veteran mentors here today. And remind me, I missed it if you said this, over the time that you've been running this program, I think you're probably over like 200 students that you've paired with a mentor so far, right?
Yeah, we've had about, it hovers right around 200. I think the last I pulled was like 203 we've had on the student side. We have some students who come back and want a mentor again, which is wonderful.
Yeah. Well, given that, could I ask you to maybe introduce our special guests, and then we can sort of start firing away with questions for them?
Absolutely. So both Denise and Isioma have been with us since the beginning of this program in the spring of 2020 and or 2021, I'm sorry. And we are just delighted to have them. So Denise is retired and has had several mentors through this program and otherwise, and has fostered some really wonderful connections with those students. And Isioma, who is joining us again internationally from Nigeria, has also been with us from the beginning and has also worked with several students, all from different walks of engineering, and they've both been very valuable mentors. And so I would actually like to note that Denise is an example of someone who took a more traditional engineering to management career path, while Isioma took a non-traditional engineering career path, but those engineering skills, of course, made her very successful in her career in business development. And I think brings a really unique perspective to some of our students who are in that exploration stage of careers.
Well, thank you both for what you've done for our students in engineering and everything that you've done for BU. Denise, I've known you for a long time. You're very involved in the university in a lot of ways, including the BU Alumni Council. And you really have been a great mentor. We profiled you on BU Connects for a relationship you had with a now grad named, I believe his name was Jorge, right? Jorge. I mean, it was just a really great story. I'm going to follow up with everybody that's here today, and I'll share that story with them so they can get a look at it too. But let's go ahead and kick things off. One of the number one things that I hear from alumni when I ask them about their willingness to be a mentor, I think people just end up with this imposter syndrome, feeling like they don't necessarily have enough experience or wisdom to share. When was it that the two of you, and maybe Isioma, we'll start with you first, when was it in your career? At what point did you feel like, hey, you know what? I feel like I can have an impact on somebody, particularly a student. When was that point for you where you were like, yes, I'm ready to sign up for this?
Thank you, Jeff. It's actually quite interesting because I think I had lots of opportunities, even in undergrad, to kind of mentor other students or at least advise other students in whether it was things related to what course you were going to take next, or what choices you were going to make in the next stage of your career. I was an RA on campus, so to say I was immersed in BU fully would be true. So I got a lot of exposure to young people and how we make decisions at that point in our lives. And of course, like my own knowledge at that point was maybe just a year ahead of everyone else. But I think it was a good beginning in terms of just learning how to share what you do know. It's not about being all-knowing as a mentor, honestly. I think that's probably the first thing to understand. There is no way you will know everything. The point is just to be open and willing to listen and support. And I think that whatever stage in your life you are, whatever stage you are in your career, you have something to offer, I assure you. So it's a great opportunity to share that with others through mentoring.
And Denise, as Mary shared, you had a pretty storied career. It might make more sense to folks that at this point in your life, you feel like you have a lot to give back. But at what point, when did you really get involved in this? Like, where did you realize that you had some things to offer others?
Well, first, I had some really good mentors as I was going through my career. So I know firsthand how valuable they can be. So that turned me on to the idea of trying to do this as early as I could. And it was really in the beginning stages of my career. I only had a year or two in, but I started speaking with other fellow employees that were earlier in their history with the company and mentoring them. And like Isioma said, you may not know everything, but you know something, and especially if you've gone through something that they haven't yet. And I did that throughout my career. And I also, once I retired, I started spending a lot of time giving back to BU. So I was able to, through guest lecturing at classes and with societies, I was able to make connections with students and then take them on as mentees. So I continued that, and I enjoyed it both with employees as well as with students. And when I heard about the program that was launching in the 2021, I was all in, because it was going to be structured, and it was going to, we were going to have an easy way to do it. And it was a way that I could help other students and also help elevate BU in terms of differentiating and what we give to our students.
Awesome. Thank you both. And so, Denise, that leads perfectly into our next question, which is, what made you want to participate in Eng Mentors? So I'll throw that to Isioma again first, and then to Denise, if you have anything else to add.
Well, like I said, I want to give back to the university. And this is a way, in my mind, this is a way that we can make the experience for students be better. Students are looking for guidance, whether it be coming through their undergraduate or going out into the workforce. And, alumni have experience that is valuable to them. And I saw it as a way to leverage the experience that I had. It's not just experience for having had it, but it can be put to more good use. And that's, I really felt that the program was a worthwhile thing, and I wanted to be part of it.
Great.
Yeah, for me, I would say definitely that I wanted an opportunity to give back to community. Obviously, I loved my experience at BU. And I think what's one of the great things you have as an alum is that you know generally how the school operates. So you obviously face some of the challenges current students are facing. Wouldn't you have liked someone to be like, oh yeah, if you're considering that, maybe you see this person in CDO before? It would have spared you maybe months of torture or something. And I think just those little insights are invaluable to students. It provides a new perspective to them and also gives you a new perspective on the university. There are a whole bunch of things you will learn about BU now versus when you were in school. It's hard to believe I was at BU about almost 15 years ago. And so a lot has changed. And so you get to see how it was then, how it is now, what has improved, the things that are new and novel, and yet the things that are exactly the same. Students still struggle with what to do with my career. A sophomore is still deciding what to do in junior year. Should they stay in their major? Should they switch? If you're a junior going on senior, this is the time to be looking for internships. Should I be maybe focused more on research? So all those are questions that are still common with students, and it's something you can at the very least provide guidance and support for.
And I would actually just add to that, in some respects, especially about those very common questions that we get as advisors in our office, I'm not entirely sure that we're saying very different things than the mentors, but I think it's really valuable for students to hear these things reiterated from different audiences, especially different audiences who are not their parents. And so mentors really punch above their weight in that respect.
Mm-hmm. So you both mentioned the role that mentoring played in your own career development. And I think we're hearing a little background noise from me. I'm sorry. Could you tell us a little bit about more who those people were that were your mentors? Were they in formal mentoring programs? Were they through just like casual relationships? Did they even know that they were your mentor? And if I made you sit down and write out a list of the lessons that you learned from these folks about what it means to be a good mentor, what are those things that you learned along the way? Denise, let's start with you.
Okay, so as I said, I had a couple that were really good, and one was very early in my career, and back in the day, we didn't have mentoring programs per se, and so this was just somebody that was more experienced than me. He was in charge of manufacturing, and he saw that I had potential. So he was spending a lot of time helping me navigate the world that I was in. And then later in life, in my career, as I transitioned into business management, I had another person that was helping me with a different phase in my career. But again, they were experienced in the journey that I wanted to go through. I would say, from what I observed from them, I would say there's a few attributes that I think make a really good mentor. One is being honest. People look for direction, they look for feedback, whether it's good or it's constructive, it can be valuable. And so being a candid person and telling them what they could do better, how they can modify is very useful. They also help you put things in perspective. You may be going through something, but you don't have the background of what's going on within the industry or your company or your environment. And the mentor can help you understand why things are happening and different ways to deal with that reality. They also can be a safe haven. The mentor isn't necessarily, not your boss or your professor. There's somebody that you can try things with. You can get guidance without fear of failure because there's not a risk in the relationship. And another, I'd say, last thing that I wanted to mention is that a good mentor can make their mentee aware of a lot of resources that are available to help them. It might be the network that mentor has. It might be helping them understand how to navigate BU Connects to find people to help them. It could be books, it could be literature, it could be their own experience. It might not even be them. Perfect example, I'm mentoring someone that's interested in the automotive industry, and I've never worked in the automotive industry, but I know people that work in the automotive industry, and by connecting those people, my mentee has the opportunity to get really important guidance that I might not necessarily be able to provide them. So those, I think, are the main things that I would say are really, I found from those mentor examples that I went through.
How about you, Isioma? Tell us about the specifics of the mentors that you've had in your life and what you would either agree with what Denise said or add to the list.
Thanks. Denise made some great points about that. In terms of mentors that have had an impact on me, I would say even my first job out of college, for instance, I am 5'4". I'm from Lagos, Nigeria. My mentor in my first job, a guy in his 30s, white guy, never left New England his entire life, awesome dude. And he was my mentor in my first role. If you looked at us, we had zero in common from an outside perspective. But on the role, you realize that you have a common passion for the job. You both want to succeed. And when you show that, people love to mentor you. They love to offer you guidance. If you're open to feedback, for instance, they will happily give it to you. They will tell you this is the direction to go in. This is who you need to talk to in order to get this done more effectively. I can't stress just how many obstacles were pushed out of my way by my mentor early in the career because they just knew where to go versus me trying to figure it all out by myself. Later in my career as well, when I had the Six Sigma role in one of my later jobs, I had a boss. This was the first time I was in a leadership team. And once again, I was the youngest person, also the only woman on the leadership team. And my boss was very instrumental in the way he brought me into those meetings. He knew that initially I was very, very shy about stating my own opinion on things, especially if it was like, oh my goodness, everyone has like 20 plus more years of experience than I do. What do I have to offer? He would tell me at the beginning of the meeting, Isioma, in this meeting, when we get to the end, I'm going to call on you so that you will know, so that everyone else will know your opinion on the matter. You will be able to, speak your own voice. And I found that so helpful. And I think just those opportunities where people provide guidance or just even a nudge in the direction, give you feedback on how you can progress, I think those things are extremely invaluable. So in terms of qualities, obviously, people who are good listeners. Well, the boss who, for instance, noticed that I wasn't speaking up at the table was the one, because he was actively listening for me. And he was like, where is she? Why isn't she saying anything? I know she has opinions. Why isn't she saying anything? And so he would come to me afterwards and say, okay, what's the issue? Why are you holding back? What would you like support on? So things like that were very helpful in moving me forward. And of course, every mentor has been a great cheerleader. Some louder than others, some more vocal than others, but every good mentor I've ever had in my life wanted me to succeed. And I think that's a fundamental aspect of a good mentor. They want you to succeed. That's the primary thing they want to do.
So let me ask a quick follow-up on that, because Denise, you talked about being honest. Isioma, you're talking about being a cheerleader. How have the two of you kind of balanced those two things? How do you remain positive, be a cheerleader, but also be real? And have you found in your experience as a mentor with our current students that you've had trouble kind of balancing those two things? Isioma, let's start with you.
I think I've found a good balance over the years, both from my own experience with mentors and just colleagues in general. You learn to realize that it's not a binary situation. People can be given feedback on something like, this didn't go as well, this could have been done better, and yet also be inherently supportive. I know you're smart. I know you're capable of doing these things. I think if you apply yourself in this direction, you can achieve your goal. Both those things can simultaneously exist. And I think it's important to emphasize that, because they trust you more when you're real with them and also support them.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Denise, anything to add?
They're always doing something well, even if there's some constructive. You're talking about a lot of different topics, whether it be school related topics or job search topics. And so, as long as your feedback is constructive and intended to be helping, and you also recognize the things that are going well, you can achieve balance. And I think as long as they understand that you're really in it to help them, it's well intended. I haven't seen a problem in that situation.
Great. So turning the lens to the away from yourselves and towards the students that you've had the opportunities to mentor, what have you observed that they need to be successful in the mentorship relationship? What are what do they need from you? And so let's start with Denise here.
One of the things that I've observed about BU students, and this is not just BU students, but students in general, I'd say, is that they may not necessarily have the work experience that a prospective employer is looking for. So part of the value add, I think, in a good mentor is to help them understand how to take what they've gained from their classroom experience, as well as maybe their extracurriculars, and package it or highlight it in their resume and in their interview process so that they can come across in an attractive manner or a desirable manner to an prospective employer when they don't necessarily have a lot of work experience. Another thing that I've observed is that they don't have a lot of experience in the job search process, the recruitment process. So they don't necessarily understand the way things flow and timelines. And so, if a mentor has had experience on the other side of the table or with filling positions, they can help the students understand how long things might take and what's the best way to deal with tricky situations that they might encounter in the recruitment process. And lastly, I'd say the value of networking. Early in your career, you don't necessarily know how critical those connections are and how you want to be making them all the time, because you might need it down the road. And so a mentor that can show the students the value of that, and also potentially introduce them to some people to network with, I think those can be valuable to the students.
Isioma, would you like to share?
Yeah, and I agree with everything Denise has said. Definitely one of the things I've observed is, and to be fair, it's what a lot of us experience when we're sophomores and juniors, especially. You don't have a clear idea of what it means to have a job after school. It's this kind of mythical land that exists post-graduation that you don't really encounter until senior year. And so for a lot of people, they don't understand, okay, how do I need to move towards this? Do I need to do that? And I think a lot of what mentors do is help manage expectations, because I think sometimes you appear and it's like, okay, people, you get out of school and instantly super job, but there's a process to get into that. You have to go through a series of interviews. Some people haven't been through a series of interviews. They don't realize that you might be able to get practice sessions at CDO. They don't know, for instance, that going to reviewing your resume every year is important. So once you finish like a set of classes, if you have new projects, you need to update it. And by the time you're in senior year, you probably should have a LinkedIn profile. So things like that are things to just get started on early. And it's a very rewarding experience to be able to reveal that to new people, because you're helping someone in the discovery process. And that's amazing. And I think that that's a lot of what people need sometimes, is just that little bit of guidance in terms of where you can go. It's great to, just remove a few of the stumbling blocks along the way.
We've got a couple of good questions that have come in from the audience already, but just wanted to take this time to remind folks, now's the time. We're going to head into audience Q&A in a few minutes. So please go ahead and either use the chat or the Q&A box to write in your questions for Denise, Isioma, or even Mary. So this question might be a little bit more difficult to answer, and I'll apologize in advance for that. But based on what you just said about, what the current engineering students have needed, what have the two of you learned from these students about being a good mentor? Has the specific experience that you've had with Mary and the engineering program changed in any way your approach to mentoring or what you understand about being a good mentor? Isioma, or whoever wants to jump in. Obviously, I think that's a harder question to answer, but Isioma, thoughts on that?
I would say, at least for me, what has changed is just my degree of flexibility. I think it's helpful. One of the things that Mary mentioned at the beginning was it's helpful to have a schedule for it. And it's very true. Just like building any habits, if you're meeting on a weekly basis or every 2 weeks at the same time, it's a lot easier to keep on track. But sometimes stuff comes up, and then you have to offer some degree of the flexibility. A student shouldn't be afraid to tell you they can't make a meeting. They need to feel that, okay, if this is going to be an issue, I need to send her an email the day before, and it's fine, we can reschedule. And I think just stating those things out, I think is part of the process that they've set up, which is excellent, which is you essentially set up the rules of engagement at the beginning. And part of that is, if you're going to be absent for a meeting, how do you inform the other person? If there's a conflict, are you going to email? Are you going to call, text? What do you do in order to make sure the other person is given enough time to move their schedule around or whatever is needed? And I think those things are a major part of making that mentoring relationship successful, because you know how exactly you're going to engage with each other during that time.
I agree completely with what Isioma said. The way that engineering has rolled it out, the rules of engagement, or your agreement about what you're going to do, is a starting point. And I would say, even if you're not in a formal program, it's beneficial for the mentor and the mentee to agree upon what are they trying to do, how often are they trying to meet, and to be respectful of each other's time. I absolutely could not agree more about the need to be flexible, because you can lay out, okay, these are our 6 meetings and this is when we're going to meet and what we're going to talk about. And then midterms happen. And, you to be supportive of your mentee when they're trying to juggle all the balls in the air, it's best to be flexible and to move it. Another thing that I've learned is that it's important to put time into preparing for your interactions with the mentee. For example, if you're going to be focusing on resume feedback, look at the resume beforehand and do some benchmarking and give them, don't be trying to just do it on the fly, because, the more thought that you can give to whatever the topic is that you're going to be discussing in your meeting, the better value you'll be providing to them. And sometimes you might have to do some research. If the mentee is in the same major as you, or the same industry, the same company, you can leverage your familiarity. But if you're mentoring somebody that's in another field, you might need to do a little bit of reading up or research to be as valuable as you can to the mentee.
And on that note, one of the most common questions we get from prospective mentors is, what's the matching process like, and how important is it that I'm in an engineering discipline? So we get a lot of questions like, oh, I went to engineering for undergrad, but now I'm in this, can I still participate? So the question being, I guess, to you, how much of the industry and job function alignment, how much is that important to the mentoring experience as opposed to universal themes of mentorship? Let's think to Denise.
I would say that universal themes are more prevalent. Right. I've mentored people in biomedical, and I'm mechanical. So they they're never asking you about how to solve this heat transfer problem. You're not getting into the details of the course. And even from an industry perspective, it's at a high level that you're talking about things. So many times it boils down to personal interactions, or, how do I handle problem solving or conflict resolution, different topics that transcend a specific major or a specific industry. It's unusual for it to be very detailed onto the major or the industry, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with Denise. I myself I studied mechanical engineering, but I've also mentored people outside of mechanical engineering. And the honest truth is, even if they were asking you technical questions, at this point, probably what they know at this stage might be different from what you know. So either way, you'll be learning something new. So I don't think you should get bogged down on, will I know everything about their area? Most of the questions I actually get are usually around how you make decisions. Whether it's decisions about your life. I had a student who was trying to decide whether she would go to grad school versus do study abroad. They were conflicting things to her. And then you had to highlight, okay, what is important to you? Is it, making money sooner? Is it getting into the career track sooner? If you start with consulting, you might have to put this on the back burner. So it's helping them essentially see what those options are and how much they mean to them. And I think just that guidance in decision making, that's where we add the most value, because we've faced similar decisions in our lives. And so that's regardless of the field or area of expertise.
And for us, sorry, Jeff, for us as administrators, that's our belief as well. And it has also solved a unique problem that we've had, which is most of our alums are mechanical engineers, and they are taking up just a smaller percentage of our student body today. So it's been really nice to see the flexibility that alumni have had in mentoring students in different disciplines, because our student demographics have changed.
And Denise, you talked about this briefly, about mentoring somebody who is in a different function, a different industry, and maybe needing to do a little bit of research to understand what that person is dealing with. I'm curious to know, as you both sort of entered into these formal mentoring programs and said, yes, I'm going to be a mentor. Did either one of you, and it's okay if you say no, but I'm curious to know if any of you have done sort of reading on the subject, were you Googling online what it means to be a good mentor? Were there books or articles that maybe you read that you might share with others who are also interested in the topic?
For me, Jeff, when I was doing mentoring with some of the companies that I worked for, they had some materials that I availed myself of. And I suggest that if you're planning on mentoring, if there's something that either your school or employer has written, read it. And certainly the guidebook that Mary and our team in engineering has put together is extremely useful in terms of starting discussion points. This book is one that I came across a number of years ago. It's Managers as Mentors by Chip Bell, 2nd edition. And it's really, it's an easy read. You might see that it's not very thick, but it's got a lot of pointers. And it talks about mentoring from a partnership perspective, because for it to be successful, it should be a partnership. Both the mentor and the mentee need to put into the relationship. But it gives some pointers for the mentor as well as the mentee. I love the fact that they've got this little personality test in it that you can take, and it helps you understand where you stand on the sociability, openness, and dominance vectors. So, if you tend to be very domineering, it gives you suggestions of how to alter your behavior to have it be a true partnership. And so that book has been helpful to me, and I do suggest reading it.
How about you, Isioma? And also Denise, 10 points for having that book just sitting there next to you
right
today.
there.
Thank you for that.
To be there.
Isioma, anything to add?
I should have prepped a book on standby. But I would say I like John Maxwell for a lot of things on leadership. So he has one specifically on mentorship. I believe it's called Mentorship 101. And I think just generally books around emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman, all those things are very helpful when having conversations. Because again, it goes back to, I think one of the core strengths of any good mentor is the ability to listen, and that's actively listen. And so I think if you have just general knowledge of that, everything else will kind of fall in place.
Awesome. It's awesome, Isioma. Barb in the chat also mentioned Mentoring 101, John C. Maxwell, and there's also a follow-up training session. And George has mentioned in the chat here, Clifton Strengths Finder, which I'm sure Mary knows very well, but that's a great sort of instrument to figure out strengths, et cetera. And maybe, if you've got, and I think actually most students have access to that through the university, but that might be a great activity to do with your mentor or your mentee to understand more about their strengths and skills, et cetera, et cetera.
And I would just add, in starting this program, this was new for our office and new for me. And so we did a lot of research. And really the main theme that all of the things we looked into came back to, from university mentorship programs to employer mentorship programs, everything like that, is just the ability to be open and communicate. And someone mentioned earlier, just like admit that you don't know everything and have a discussion about what the goals are and how to figure out the things that you don't know. So from there, I definitely want to get to those questions in the chat. So, but last but not least, one plug, which is, what would you say to anyone who's reluctant to invest their time in a mentorship role? And let's start with Isioma.
Do it. No, I think it's definitely one of the things that it can seem a little intimidating at the beginning, especially, I know many of us suffer from imposter syndrome. Like, will I know enough to be of value? Will they just think like, oh, just some random person coming to talk to me for like, 30 minutes. But I think what you really have to keep in mind that everyone has value to offer, everyone. And if you listen and you actively try to understand what it is that they're going through, what issues that they're trying to deal with, and you're helping them, they are so appreciative and receptive. It's actually amazing. Like sometimes I feel like this is about me because I get so much from the experience as well. And I think that's one of the things people don't realize a lot about mentorship. It's like a two-way street. It's never just you giving. If you actually are open to receiving, you will be amazed at what you learn from your mentees, because they are dealing with new issues. They are, the other day, she mentioned, one of my mentees mentioned a software that they were using that didn't exist when I was a student. I was like, oh, what's that? So I had to go Google and look it up. And I think just they give you a new perspective. And I think it's a valuable thing and something to treasure. Yeah.
I completely agree with what you said. I think that you can get a tremendous amount out of it in addition to giving. And the experience that we have as alumni can be very, very valuable to them. And it also really, it doesn't just help the mentee and the mentor, it's also helping the university, because the students that are graduating and finding jobs know a lot about how to be successful, and they learn as they're going through their careers. So it elevates the stature of the university, and it's a way for us to give back.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go into one of the questions that we have in the Q&A, which is how can I best connect and become a mentor? And we also have another question about how to get involved. So the first part of this answer is, if you are an engineering alumni, we send out emails for signups of just about every semester, so 3 times a year. Well, we run Eng Mentors twice a year, but we have other opportunities 3 times a year for alumni to participate with students with mock interviews or panels, or any sort of that sort of stuff. The other answer, and I'll share this answer with Jeff as well, because I'm sure he has something to add, is to indicate you are offering mentorship in BU Connects. That allows students to approach you for mentorship. And outside of the College of Engineering, there are some other programs for mentorship specifically. I know there's one in athletics. The College of Communications has recently started one, and I think there are a few others that are bubbling up in different groups. But Jeff, I'm sure you have stuff to add there.
Yeah, I have a whole evil plan at the end of today to talk about BU Connects and how people can best make use of that to find a mentor or be a great mentor. So we'll definitely cover that at the end. David asked a question in the Q&A here pretty early on about the traits of good mentors, and I think we spent quite a bit of time talking about that. But I'm gonna twist David, I'm gonna twist your question around here a little bit. I heard a lot of agreement between Denise and you, Isioma, about what makes a good mentor. I'm wondering, and maybe David's wondering, is there anything that either one of you said that you disagree on? Or I'll also ask it this way: when you think about the idea of mentoring, are there pieces of being a mentor that you think is maybe there's like an old way of looking at it, concepts about being a mentor that maybe you don't really agree with? Does that make sense? Isioma, do you have any kind of an immediate reaction to that?
So I think about it from maybe, the old school version of mentoring. Maybe it was more so you are the all-knowing pro at everything. You have, 20 plus years of experience. You're like the OG in your field. Like there's nothing you don't know. But mentoring now is less of a one-way, I know everything and I'm downloading it into you, and more of a two-way street of getting information, of assessing it, seeing how you can add value, and then giving it back as well. And then, of course, you also learning in that process. So I think it's significantly more collaborative than maybe the traditional versions of it might have been.
I think that's a great answer. Denise, anything to add?
No, she nailed it, really. I mean, and as one that had lived through the old way of doing things, it's definitely different now, and it's much better as a result.
Dave had asked a question in the chat here, and Dave, I might be misunderstanding your question. I don't know if you're asking Mary about how she's sort of managing this specific mentoring program, or the way I'll ask Denise and Isioma, when you think about the mentoring relationships that you've had in trying to be a good mentor, have either one of you found yourselves like documenting or tracking the interactions that you've had? I know Mary has some very specific steps along the way that she wants you to do as part of her program, but are you creating spreadsheets about conversations and topics you've had with your mentee, anything along those lines?
Well,
Or Dave, were you asking Mary about the program? Go ahead.
I was going to say, Jeff, I take notes on what we talk about, and we do track job applications, because I'm typically helping students that are seniors or graduate students that are looking for jobs. So they often will create a spreadsheet that tracks their different opportunities that they've applied to. We use that to talk through what's going to come up. But and through the program that engineering has structured, you plan out the milestones that you want to discuss. And, we navigate by that. Maybe we'll switch things around. Like if somebody has an interview that's coming up, we'll move interview prep up because that's important. And that gets to the flexibility point. But those are the main things that I've used to navigate through the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for me, I would say I tend to be mentoring usually sophomores and juniors. I think Mary knows historically when she asks, like, who would you prefer to mentor? I'm like, anyone. And so I think I particularly like sophomores and juniors because I was one of those students who took their time figuring out what they were trying to do with themselves. And so I think I have a fair degree of empathy for that stage in life. And so I would say in terms of just what people need at that stage, it's just, I write down notes and then kind of keep track of what did we decide on the last time, or what did you decide to move forward on. So for instance, if you decided, okay, instead of prepping for like a summer internship, I want to do like a summer research program. And so, okay, what have you started doing on that? Have you started looking up maybe the professors you might be interested in working with? Are there any particular topics that you would like to focus on? And then where should we start looking? So it's just helping them with that progression and staying on track. That's really the main value add.
Awesome. And Mary, you just shared a great document in the chat. You want to talk about what that was?
Yeah, so I just shared the mentorship guide that we give to all participants in our program. It is a PDF, and if you'd like me to email it to you, or if there are any schools or departments that are interested, feel free to come to me, and I'm happy to share. But we've provided this to our mentors and mentees to help them guide the experience, to help them take notes and keep on track. But as Denise and Isioma mentioned, there are lots of other things that mentors do that we're not always involved in. And so we've seen a lot of spreadsheets, we've seen a lot of notes, and it's really heartwarming to see that that our mentors are so invested in the success of our students, and that they've come up with systems that work best for them and their students.
Awesome. Well, with the few minutes we have left here, as I mentioned, I do want to talk, and this answers questions. People are interested in getting more involved and being a mentor, and BU Connects is a great way to do that. And so for just a few seconds here, I want to share my screen with you to talk about how BU Connects can help make that happen, both for people that are seeking mentors or offering to be a mentor. And my first piece of feedback for everybody is, if you're offering to be a mentor, it's very easy to do. If you've not joined BU Connects, first off, please, what are you waiting for? Get on there now. But we've got over 6,400 alumni, faculty, and staff members who've made themselves available for mentoring on BU Connects. These are alumni all over the world, from all of BU schools and colleges, all of our industries, amazing organizations. And the very simple way, when you sign up for BU Connects, it's going to ask you if you want to be a mentor, if you offer mentoring. And you can do that just by clicking a box. I'll show you that in a minute. But one of the most common things I hear from people who have offered mentoring on BU Connects is that they haven't been contacted by anybody yet. And there's a couple common reasons why that might happen. I'm going to show you a couple examples here. And Denise and Isioma, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to use you as an example. Can you all see Isioma's profile right now? Am I sharing that correctly? Okay, great. So if you don't fill out your profile completely on BU Connects, people aren't going to find you. People are going to the directory and searching by what organizations they work at, where they live in the world, what they studied at the university, but also what work they're doing now. One of the main ways that we're connecting mentors is by professional interests. And so you can see here, Isioma's got a great example. She's put a lot of information in her summary here, which, if people are doing a keyword search for something that she mentions, she's going to come up in their search for a mentor. Obviously adding an industry and a job function. And then again, as I mentioned, professional interests. It's not unusual. And in fact, we've got data that shows 10 years after graduation, about 50% of BU alumni might end up working in a role that isn't directly related to what they studied. And so, sure, you got your degree from engineering, but you might be, running your own company as an entrepreneur. And so we want to match people based on professional interests, not just educational history. So making sure that you fill out that profile all the way is really important. One thing I would also add is listing your full job experience. Places that you worked prior to where you are now is another key way that people might find you. For Denise, you ended your career at one place, but you also worked in some other very large organizations and have some experience in those. So one really easy way to do that. And I think a lot of people actually don't fill out this previous experience section because it's a little bit time consuming. But if like Denise, you have connected your LinkedIn profile to your BU Connects profile, it will automatically pull in your job experience. You just have to actually resync that from time to time. So long story short, filling out your profile is the very best way to be found. Because if you don't, people aren't going to find you when they do a search. Or when they just simply click on mentoring and look to see who the system is suggesting to those folks. One piece of advice I would also give you is, as a mentor, one thing you'll definitely want to do is actually go over to the left-hand side here and configure your mentoring settings. You have the ability to say how many folks you're willing to have a mentoring relationship with at any given time. And if you only set that to 1, if you agree to mentor somebody on BU Connects or are matched in one of our existing programs, you're going to disappear from view if you say that you're only willing to mentor a certain number of folks. So lastly, many of you asked, like, how do I get involved? And Mary very clearly has opportunities for people from the College of Engineering. As she mentioned, the former athletes have a mentoring program. The School of Public Health is running one. But we will be rolling out in 2023 way more opportunities on BU Connects for alumni of all schools and colleges to participate in a dedicated timed program, like what Mary has been doing at engineering. So the best thing that you can do, again, make sure that you're offering mentoring on your profile, because I'm going to reach out to all of those folks and let them know about the opportunities that are coming up. So any questions about that? I know we're running against time here. I'm just looking at the chat for questions. Okay, so last thing I want to say is, if you are looking for a mentor, I know we had some students that signed up for this session today. If you're not in engineering, can't participate in an actual timed program, BU Connects makes it incredibly easy. So let's go to the directory. You can see all these folks that are willing to help, but by clicking on mentoring is actually going to search through everybody in the community that has added mentoring availability to their profile. The first thing that you're going to see is that the system is using our custom algorithm to suggest potential mentors for you. And that's matching a number of things on profiles, but the number one factor, again, is professional interests. So you need to make sure that you fill out your own professional interests so we can match you with somebody who has something similar. And then it's also matching you based on degree, other experiences, things like that. If you don't want to go with these suggested mentors, and again, right here on the site has the ability to just go ahead and connect with them, ask them to be your mentor. Boom, there you go. You can search for mentors in your area. You can search for mentors by job function, by industry, by the company that they work for, or quite frankly, just find your own mentor. This is just going to take you back to the directory where you can open up all of the search filters on the right-hand side. Let's say you're specifically looking for a mentor in Hong Kong. You can then search through the directory, and this very handy green badge here, which Denise and Isioma and I think probably Mary all have, indicates that somebody is offering mentoring. So it's incredibly easy. And again, to the point I made for mentors, we are going to be adding very specific mentoring programs for the spring semester where we'll be matching students with alumni from all schools and colleges. So if you are seeking mentoring on your profile, you will get a message from me saying, hey, you know, we've got some mentoring opportunities for you to take advantage of. So I don't see any other questions. Mary, any final comments about anything that we talked about today?
You know, you're never too young or too old to mentor. That would be my last words.
Final thoughts, Denise, Isioma?
I would say, you know, if you find that you're too busy to do it now, revisit that over time, because things change in your life and you might be at a peak in your career and you can't right now, but that doesn't mean you wouldn't be able to in a short period of time. And it is really very rewarding and enjoyable to do.
Well, Denise and Isioma, thank you so much for everything that you've done for our students over the years, all that you do for BU. And Mary, thank you for partnering with me on running these mentoring opportunities on BU Connects. It's really been awesome working with you. And thank you for helping put this panel together today.
And thank you, Jeff.
I want to thank all of our guests for attending today. If you haven't joined BU Connects, you want to talk about it, let me know. I'm a fan. I also want to thank everybody that supports the university with your dollars. We wouldn't be able to do this work without you. And I want to invite everybody, you know, we do events like this every month. Our next career webinar is coming up on November 16th. We're going to be offering improvisation, a key skill for 21st century leaders. This is a really interesting BU alum who's got a consulting company that helps managers understand improv comedy and how they can use those principles to be a better manager. You're all invited. You can sign up for that session now on our website, bu.edu/alumni. Thanks again, Isioma, Denise, Mary, and thanks everybody. Have a great day or a great evening, wherever you might be. Have a nice night in Nigeria, Isioma. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Denise and Mary.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Denise.
Thank you both.
Take care.